The Todd Shapiro Show. Canada Laughs, SiriusXM 168.
It's time for a cannabis catch-up brought to you by Boveda Inc.
What a day to do a cannabis catch-up.
What am I walking into?
Well, dude, it's deep talks with Todd Shapiro, man. That's
Dude, it's a new day, man.
How are you, brother?
You guys are even referencing Tim Metcalf in Revenge of the Nerds. I mean, you're just going, yeah, you're getting deep here. This is great.
We get deep, man. What's it like? You're in Southern Cal right now?
I am. I'm still in SoCal, heading to beautiful Utah tomorrow for a convention.
Is there news? Are you watching the news? Are people talking about how significant this day here is in Canada?
I wish they were more. So in my circle, and I've been in the scene for a while now. And obviously, yeah, so my LinkedIn and my Instagram and Twitter, Facebook, every handle, even Snap, I'm getting all kinds of feeds and seeing what's going on. Heck, even one of our influencers up there, Weedstagram, he is one of the images on CNN.com story down here. So I'm getting it, but as far as like the mainstream, a lot of people just aren't aware, and I don't think they understand just how big a deal. I mean, this isn't just the end of prohibition for a country. This is the end of prohibition for the second largest country in the world, only behind Russia. I mean, that is, you guys are a serious landmass. And yeah, we've talked about, you guys have about 36.5 million people. We have about 39.5 million down here in California. But it's not just the domestic conversation and a difference that it's making in your homeland. It's how much of a difference this is going to make on a global scale. So, yeah, it's a big deal to me. I just wish it was more of a big deal. It'll be in the 6 o'clock news and such, I'm sure.
It's a good little subtle chirp, though. Like, hey, we've been legal here in California. We got more people than you.
In this one state.
Yeah, I can respect that.
It's such a different setup, though. It's such a different setup in Canada because, like in the states individually have so much power, whereas in Canada, the provinces, we really don't have any power on a provincial level, really. Federally, if we decide to do something, we just go ahead and do it.
It gets done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good way of putting it. And you're right. I mean, it is a little different with a Commonwealth country versus what we're dealing with. And as I like to call it, extreme capitalism, it is the U.S. But, I think even having said that, when you hear that places like Quebec are on board with it, I mean, that even I know how much weight that carries to hear that everywhere from B.C. to New Brunswick is on board with this at some level or another. I mean, you guys have to sort out some details. It's kind of a work in progress versus a Van Gogh out the gate, but it's still big to me. I still think it's very impressive that you guys got in. I know this is a big part of Trudeau's kind of pitch when he came into office, if you will, and glad to see it's coming into fruition for you.
So in your country, when do either the Republicans or the Democrats start talking about this stuff on a federal level to get support? I asked the same thing to Bruce Linton, the CEO of Canopy Growth. It'd be interesting to see what you have to say, Lance, being right in America.
Oh, man. Yes. So it's something that's already a conversation. It's coming from two different angles, though. The Dems always try to favor a little bit of the liberal and bipartisan audience, where the Republicans are very proud red. And they're both parties, I'd say, are motivated by different things at a certain level. And that's why people fall under either the blue camp or the red camp or purple. They don't want to deal with either. So the Democrats have been in support for some time. Just going back to California really quick, we have, in my opinion, probably soon to be Governor Gavin Newsom. He was one of the only politicians in the state of California. And you guys know, we're pretty easygoing. We're surfer, stoner, .coms, Hollywood types out here. We're kind of everything and open, just like you guys were having in conversation. I never looked twice when two guys were kissing either. That's not each their own. Hey, power to them. And that's really the mentality of California. But having said that, Gavin Newsom was the only one that was really out of the political closet on being pro-cannabis. So even a state like California, where you think, here's all these old school hippies and they're all going to be for it, it's still a bit of a challenge. I think why it's coming into fruition at a federal level in conversation more so is thankfully government groups like the FDA, who the FDA all of a sudden just dropped CBD. Now, this is kind of big. It wasn't made a bigger deal, unfortunately, but the FDA just dropped the schedulization of CBD, cannabidiol, which we've talked about on the show. They dropped it to a Schedule 5, which is the lowest schedule, whereas THC and cannabis has always been at a Schedule 1. So that's a huge move just for one arm of the government to push forward. And then, the Republicans, energy goes where the money flows. You've heard me say that before, and everyone knows this is a multi-billion-dollar market. And you can look at it different ways. You can be pro-medical, like I am, or you can just be pro-capitalism, like some of the politicians are. But either way, like I said, for Utah to do an about-face, a 180 on moving forward with medical, that in itself speaks volumes about where this country's going.
Hey, where does acid fall on that schedule?
Oh, man. Have you guys heard? They're actually signing. I'm not making this up. It's not April 1. They actually are signing. They're actually signing petitions out here to try to move forward with mushrooms, not necessarily acid, but psychedelics is the next thing in conversation. And there is a limited, only with one lab, but there is a limited study that's going on right now, another one that ties back to FDA, on hallucinogenics and how they affect things like PTSD and ADHD. So it's not unplausible. And again, at least, hey, mushrooms are also another natural element, Acid, you can't say the same. We know the history of that, but I think, who knows, maybe there's an opportunity if the medical field can prove it.
Are there, when it comes to mushrooms, are there receptors like there would be for cannabis?
There are not receptors,
okay.
So it doesn't plug in. That's the one thing compared to a great point, Todd, compared to opioids or even mainstream pharmaceuticals, barbiturates, methamphetamines, all the way down to hallucinogenics. There is not a system like there is an endocannabinoid system for cannabis. So to point that out, we're talking Legos with cannabis. Everything else is Legos and Lincoln Logs. And so that would be an argument as well, is if the system isn't there to accept it and properly process it, then is it something that's advantageous from a medical standpoint? But then again, is oxycodone, So excellent question.
What's the next step? Like Todd touched on it politically. What's the next step? Is it going to be the next election? Is it going to become an issue, or where do you see it going in terms of legalization on other states, or is anyone else coming on board?
Yeah, great question. So we actually have 4 different states that are coming on for. So we talked about midterm elections. Actually, that's one thing that I know you want to get into, Todd. But with midterm elections, there's a lot of elections that go on. But essentially what the midterm election is everything that's going to be voted in halfway through the current presidential time frame. So right now we're 2 years into a 4-year term. So that's why we have, obviously, a lot of elections that are coming up in November. But to answer your question, yeah, we have Michigan. So Michigan is a pretty heavy state. A lot of people forget about it. Everyone thinks of New York down here, California, Florida, Texas. Michigan's a pretty heavy hitter, and they've had some challenges, but we think that they're probably going to move forward. It is on their ballot for November. We also have, of all places, Oklahoma. So if you guys know, Oklahoma is really it's right on the cusp, but it's considered a southern state along with Texas. So for Oklahoma to have consideration is a huge factor. And then the other one, which I've touched on, is Utah. In Utah, we all recognize that is the official Mormon state. We all acknowledge all the way back from Brigham Young in the 1800s when they settled there, it has been a very dominant Mormon state, and the church has a very heavy influence on the state there, as opposed to most of our states where it's not just a term, it's technically true. It's church and state. We very much divide, the steeple from the capital. So for Utah to be on board, and then Missouri is another one as well that has some things going on for November.
If all 4 of those states, let's say, support legislation for cannabis legalization, how many would that be total?
Like 14?
Where's the tipping
point?
There's got to be a tipping point eventually.
100%. Yeah, it's spot on. So we're really, we're at 9 states plus D.C., the District of Columbia right now from a adult use, or what we call recreational. Same thing you guys just approved. The other is medical, and technically, if you loop them all together with the medical, we're at 39, 40 states that are legal at some level. With Texas, it's only CBD. It's very finite, but technically CBD has been legalized to a certain degree, so we can say 40 states. So we've already hit the tipping point. We're at 4/5. So I don't know how much more of a vast majority. And then you look at the stats, and the latest stats on polling Americans is that 64% of all Americans are in 100% approval of cannabis at some level. So, it's how much more facts do you need to go up against, I don't know, maybe the companies or entities that are keeping us restricted from moving forward. And again, that might be big pharma, that might be alcohol. I mean, there's a lot of people that go and try to push the right buttons over in DC.
Is there not big pot now? There should be big pot now, though, right? There should be lobbying for big marijuana.
Yeah, we're working on that.
Yeah.
You guys are doing a better job than us on that. I mean, really, honestly, it's again to the Canadians, and that's why
You know what the problem is? You don't have marijuana in bullet form yet. If you could throw that in a bullet and shoot it over to your buddy.
Yeah. You'll get my bong when you get it from my cold dead hand.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You guys always are good at pointing out the embarrassing aspects of this country.
Yeah, you guys are kind of like the Revenge of the Nerds, and we're like the Notebook or something.
Pan down. Yeah.
Well, I hope it happens soon. I really sincerely hope it happens. I think it will. I really do. I think, like, I've been really following the story, and Todd can say this for a long time.
I feel like I know too much.
Yeah, I do see it. The dominoes are falling in the U.S. It's just a matter of time before I think the federal Democrats say, "Let's do this."
I think it's Trump.
Really?
I think it's Trump. I think it's Trump in the next 2-3 weeks.
I think he's going to change the way it's
probably,
perceived.
yeah.
He's going to what, Mike?
He's going to change the way that it's looked amongst conservatives. He's going to be like, we're going to legalize weed so that we can take the money. We're going to take it out of the criminals' hands. We're going to take it out of Mexico. He's going to do this weird, like, racist thing, and then he's going to change the way they look at it. He's not going to make it a drug thing. He's going to make it a money thing, and that's why we're doing it, to take money out of criminals. He's a smart man. He's manipulating.
Yeah, did you see what the Ontario government, or I mean the Canadian government did today? So I meant to ask Bruce this earlier about that they're going to grant pardons for small offenses, like under 30 grams or something.
Yeah.
Which is brilliant. But did you see that? I thought I read this, and I could be wrong. I sort of skimmed through it just before the show. There was a bit of a fee that you had to, like, apply for within the government to get this done. It was like, it's like getting your driver's license. Like, it costs you a couple $100 every year. So I think, and for those who can't afford it, maybe they would then subsidize it. But I think there was like a fee to do it. So that's just another way to get money as well. Like, it's kind of crazy. So you could spin it that way too, that you could get people off of reason. The States is saying now that just because you get off here in Canada doesn't mean you can come and travel into the States quite yet. But it's going to be a fascinating time. Now, I guess my last question is sort of a serious one as well. How much of this, like, when I think of the states and people talk about the southern states and, the Bible thumping states and stuff, like, how much of this is still religious based? Because I feel like here in Canada, we're not, I don't know, that doesn't seem to, you never really meet a Canadian be like, well, there's a religious Bible thumper. Like, maybe some of the western states, provinces, but
a little bit, and a little bit out west.
A little bit out west, not quite Vancouver way, but you know what I mean, a little bit in between. And then, but in the States, you hear that. So how much, like, is a lot of this stigma still religious based?
I think to a certain extent, I think it is, because it's something that, we've talked about the Daryl Gates movement, which was the individual who started the DARE program in Los Angeles in 1983. And, of course, Nancy Reagan, President Reagan's wife, took that ball and ran with it all through the 80s and scared the hell out of all of us that were growing up then.
See, old people are assholes. We were talking about that.
The old
That's the worst.
The worst.
Talking about the old people is classic. But one of the things, I think religion, and you look at what the dominance of religion, whether it be Catholicism or Christianity, or even Latter-day Saints, it is something that is a factor, and that's a negativity that just adds up there with with explicit content and alcohol and every other. It just kind of lump them all together, and you're not a saint if you partake in any of these things. So, and keeping in mind also the Bible Belt. I didn't even know this until my brief stint. Todd, I moved to Colorado when recreational adult use legalized in January 14. And even though my family was from there, I did not know Colorado Springs is the country's capital of mega churches. In a mega church, to give you an idea, this is a church that has a movie theater and a bowling alley inside. So that's
really
really
cool.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm too high for this. I'm like, I could get into religion. I mean, can we go Sunday morning?
It's 12 pin bowling, one for each disciple.
Yeah, it's like, it's off. No, it's not. This is religion.
You just got to sacrifice the turkey.
The holy rollers. Here we go.
Exactly. So that's really where the belt. So if you look at it, this proverbial belt that we talk about, starting as far west as Colorado, which is the gateway to the west, all the way over to the Carolinas, which is the eastern seaboard, the southeast. There's a lot of states that are looped into that. But again, there's a lot of states that are going through some issues. Kentucky, for example, tobacco, as you guys may know, has become a little taboo here in the States, and smoking's not necessarily cool. So now tobacco has shifted to being this huge exporter instead of domestic business. Well, they pulled out of production in places like Kentucky. So Kentucky's like, what are we going to do? We need another cash crop. Ka-ching, hemp. And so now all of a sudden Kentucky is just putting, hectares upon hectares of land that they're replacing tobacco with hemp. I mean, that's huge. That's us winning kind of one state at a time with understanding that this plant's okay. You used to be able to pay your taxes back at the turn of the 20th century with this plant. I mean, come on. It wasn't always such a bad thing.
My capitalist mind is working overtime right now, going, I'm invested in hemp countries in the States. I'm gonna do my research. Well, I'm serious, right? They got to be, they're the ones making the waves right now.
Yeah, they are.
You guys ever going public at Boveda Inc.?
No, we're happy where we are. We're happy where we are. We're a private-owned, a family-owned business, and very happy with that. There's definitely, we've talked about before, Todd, there's some good business to invest in out there, and just keeping an eye on them. And it's all over. I mean, obviously, what you guys having going on with the Toronto Stock Exchange. I don't know. In Ontario, I mean, you guys are really, can I say that Toronto is kind of the California, or even, my gosh, maybe the whole province is the California of Canada? Because that's what I'm getting. Because to your point, I posted that up, Todd, last night on my LinkedIn feed about the whole expunging, any minor cases to do with cannabis. That's something that happened in San Francisco. It's something that's happening in LA. Even Massachusetts got on board. But seriously, for you guys to flip that switch, and then reading some of the guides, quote unquote, to cannabis in Ontario, saying that, my gosh, what is this? Cannabis can be smoked in the same public places tobacco is allowed, except vehicles and boats. I'm like, I'm sorry, is this Canada or is this San Francisco? I mean, some of the things I'm reading through on what's quote unquote okay as of October 17th for specifically Ontario is very impressive, what you guys have going on up there. So again,
is a Sea-Doo considered a boat? No, it's funny you say that. While you say that, we have a very conservative premier, so it's kind of interesting. It's its own conundrum, Ontario, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all.
I can see that. I'm learning more and more.
But the country very, I have such pride right now being Mike Reed has got to run. Mike's got to run. Well, listen, Lance, we'll actually cut you off too. I don't mean to be a dick. We got programming at 5:30. We're just appreciative of you being a part of this sort of legalization day. I know that your business is obviously heavily involved with whether it's a medical flower or now a recreational flower here in Canada. For bovedainc.com, two-way humidity control packs. You guys are such. Also, you're about information and about education. That's one thing we're doing very well here, and that's what you try to do well within your company and getting people off opiates and stuff and trying to make them understand the difference and understand what CBD is, what THC is, what hemp is. You guys help us immensely learn, and good luck to your country trying to catch up and, become a little more softer and civilized.
Hey.
The Todd Shapiro Show.
You are the greatest hero in American history.
SiriusXM Canada Laughs Channel 168.